Before I explain whatever the hell this was and my experience with it, I want to explain the whole concept of FNATI and how to beat every single one of the max modes listed here. Yeah, I did make 2 guides on it, but I really didn't like how they turned out. So here we are. I'm making a new one, like a real, actual, complete one. This is a FNATI guide. Once you open the game, you're greeted with the custom night menu. At the bottom right, you can see the settings, achievements, and stats tabs. They each do what you think they do. In the settings, you can turn on office projection. You can either make the office restart instant or a hold. You can either make the exit hold or instant too. And with the menu, you can either skip the night title faster or keep it at the normal speed. These are my personal settings, but these are all up to objective opinion. Same with these two. Speaking of which, silent mode buffs indicator. This is a choice of either voice lines, hallucinations, or what I have on, both. I'll get to what these mean in the future. And lastly, we have the jump scare volume, which changes the volume of the jump scare. What else would it do, I mean? In the achievements tab, you can look at the badges and the milestones that you have completed so far. And in the stats tabs, you can view all your attempts on each specific mode as well, and see all your deaths and replays. I don't have any because I don't record replays anymore in this game. Next, we're gonna go into the regular night. Once you load into the night, you have 3 defenses at your disposal. Shutting off the camera, standing still, and turning off the lights. To shut off the camera, press the button right next to cam 10. To stand still, hold the spacebar. Note that you cannot move, access the lights, or shut off access the cameras while you're standing still. For turning off the lights, click on the light bulb. This region here, box region over here, indicates what is considered the lights. So if you press anywhere within this region, your lights will turn off. You have no power limit in this game, for now. A camera is always shut off at the beginning of the night, and shutting off the camera changes which one is shut off. For instance, we can now look at cam 10, but since I shut off cam 3, we can no longer access cam 3. You have access to all 10 of these cameras, and all of them at some point will have at least one character to deal with within those cameras. Now, we can talk about each character. Now, with all of that out of the way, we can now go to each character's mechanic and explain what they do and how to counteract each of them. This is under the assumption that all characters are at 20 AI, since a lot of things are affected by AI. We first begin with Photo Negative Mickey, or PNM for short. He starts in cam 3 after 11 seconds, and after 11 seconds, he'll move to cam 1. Afterwards, he takes 8 seconds to either go to cam 2 or cam 6. In our case, he chose cam 2. In order to deal with him, once he appears in your office, with this sound cue, you must shut off his camera for 2 seconds. He'll reset back to cam 3 after you do this, and his kill timer is stalled as his camera is off. His kill timer lasts 7 seconds. Disembodied is the next character. He's the occasional annoyance for your office. He always resides in cam 3. This is his first stage. He's docile and not really doing anything. You can tell when he changes stages, and his second stage, he'll stare at you through the camera. And after a couple seconds, he'll teleport to your office. He can either be on the left, or he could be on the right. In order to get rid of him, you must shut off a camera corresponding to the side he's on. For the left side, these are 10, 2, 6, and 5. For the right side, these are 3, 1, 4, 8, and 9. Cam 7 is a middle camera, and is basically there to differentiate between left and right. Once again, if you chose left, we'll shut him off. Note that disembodied prevents you from standing still and turning off the lights. So ideally, he's an active threat to get rid of as soon as possible. Once you shut off that camera, he leaves instantly and is reset back to cam 3. Impurity tends to get a lot of new players, so here's how she works. After 14 seconds have passed in the night, she will spawn in cam 3 with this sound cue.
Why do I exist?
After 11 seconds, she'll move to cam 1, and then after another 11, she moves to cam 2, and then after another 11, she moves to cam 6, and then you're off. There are sound cues depending on which camera she moves to. In order to deal with her, you must keep her camera shut off at all times. The reason why is because as her camera is shut off, her timer resets back to 11, and her movement timer stays at 11 until her camera is turned on again. For instance, her movement timer is running right now, but if I were to have this camera closed, her movement timer stopped at 11. If she's in your office, there is no way to prevent her from going back, and she will kill you after 11 seconds of her being in the office, making her a high priority in terms of keeping camera management. Acephalus and Undying work practically the same, so I'll talk about them together. Acephalus starts in cam 5, then he stands up, then he moves to cam 2. This is Undying, we'll worry about him later. Once he's in your office, you'll hear his sound cue, and you must stand still on the left in order to get rid of him. For Undying, he starts in cam 8 on this side, goes to cam 1, and you'll be seeing him here, cam 2, then your office, with that sound cue. For him, he's the same, but you just have to stand still on the right. Both of their kill timers are 8 seconds, and are stalled once you stand still. Oswald also requires you to stand still, but he only spawns after camera flips, however. On 20 AI, he takes 3 cam flips to initially spawn, and afterwards, it's after every 2 flips. To deal with him, you must stand still. He gives you 6 seconds to stand still, and you can stand still anywhere in the office. This kill timer is stalled as you are holding still. The face starts in cam 9 after 11 seconds. You'll see him on the camera. After another 11 seconds, he'll begin to enter your vent. After that, he slowly gets into your office. This is his first sound cue indicating he has just entered the vent, and after 5 seconds, and after 6 seconds, this sound cue will play, indicating he's in your office. Turn off the lights to deal with him. He gives you 5 seconds to deal with him, and his attack timer is stalled once you do turn off the lights, and due to this mechanic, he stalls half of the cast. Speaking of Hourglass, you can either choose to spawn in cams 3, 4, 8, 9, or 5. In our case, he chose to go to cam 5. These cameras will determine what action you must do against him. For cams 3 and 4, shut off any camera and he'll leave instantly. For cams 5 and 8, you must stand still, and for cam 9, you must shut off the lights. He moves into your office after 28 seconds, however, you can only deal with him once he's at your desk. As you can see, he is far away, but we cannot deal with him not just yet. Once he appears at our desk, that's when we start doing the correct action. He gives you 6 seconds to do this, and his kill timer is stalled if it's the correct action. For this case, he chose cam 4, and because he chose cam 4, you could shut off any camera for him and he'll leave. Mascot Photonegative Mickey first appears in your office after 13 seconds. He'll make no sound cue, but is noticeable once he appears. Flick your mouse from side to side to deal with him. His kill timer is 7 seconds and is stalled as you are flicking. Here's an example. Notice how he made no sound cue, but is clearly visible on the left side. So once he's there, you must flick your mouse for 7 seconds. Mortimer appears in your office after 10 seconds initially. As he's in your office, his theme begins to play and your screen will turn gray as he stays. And the music begins to slow down. He gives you 24 seconds until he kills you. To deal with him, shut off the camera where his theme is playing the loudest or is visibly shaking. His kill timer is stalled as his camera is off and it takes around 2 seconds to leave. In an instance, he chose cam 7. Notice how everything's slowing down and turning gray. And once you deal with him, everything goes back to normal. Classic Photonegative Mickey. Or, well, CP&M for short. He appears after 10 seconds. He can spawn in either cams 3, 1, 2, or 6 with this sound cue. In our case, he chose cam 2. After another 24 seconds, he appears in your office. Unlike P&M, however, he gives no indication of where he was last, so as a result, you may need to last memorize where he was. As you can see, he is in cam 2, but gave no indication that he was from cam 2. He takes 1 second to leave, and his kill timer is 9 seconds, and once again, it is stalled as you are on the correct camera. Classic face, or CTF for short, will appear after 4 camera flips initially. Afterwards, he can spawn from 3 to 5 flips. Once he appears in your office, he gives you 2 seconds to flip up your monitor before he kills you. He stalls the office cycle characters and both PNMs. Pete is invisible in the cameras, but is indicated by a red dot on the one that he's currently on. Watch which one he's on to get rid of him. As you can tell by that sound cue, that means Pete has spawned. He gives you 20 seconds to look at his camera before he kills you. His kill timer is paused once you're staring at his camera. Willie is basically the opposite of Pete. Whereas Pete is invisible and likes being watched, Willie is visible and hates being watched. He has 3 stages. This is his normal stage. This is stage 2. And that's stage 3. Stage 1 is his normal phase, stage 2 is where his eyes are gone, and stage 3 where he's gonna kill you. Looking at him for 1 second will make him progress a stage, and if you look at him for too long in stage 3, he will kill you after 1 second. Sparky is our last character on this roster. He appears in your office after 11.5 seconds have passed, appearing on the right side of your office. Once he's there, you must shut off the lights and stand still at the same time. After that, you must shut off any camera to fully deal with him, giving you another 11.5 seconds to deal with him. His first kill timer is stalled once you turn off the lights and stand still, but this does not apply to his second phase. There was something I mentioned earlier that I'll now go into depth with. That is stalling. Now what is stalling? Well, some characters have priority with their mechanics over others. The best example is, well, the face. Can't see him right now because Hourglass is in the way, but right now the face is stalling everybody in this field of view. This includes MP&M, Undying, Cephalus, Sparky, Hourglass in the middle, CP&M, and Disembodied and CTF. See? And the face, note to self, has his mechanic so that he's stalled as the lights are off. As you can see, everybody there couldn't have killed me because of the fact that, well, the face stalled them. This is especially important if you need to resync your office cycle. Believe me, it can save you. Trust me, it will. I'm gonna go into the office cycle. Now what is the office cycle? Well, the office cycle consists of 4 characters and 5 actions. This cycle will always automatically eliminate these 4 characters from your mental load. It starts when Undying spawns in. First, you shake for MP&M, stand still on the right for Undying, lights off, stand still for both Ace and Sparky, and then shut off the camera. Shutting off the camera will fully deal with Sparky, and no matter what happens, this will always reset and will always happen no matter what. This is a continuous loop for the entire night. I'd also like to note that try to shut off the camera as fast as possible. The reason why is because we do not want Sparky off sync from the rest of the group. As if you take too long to shut off the camera, he might just desync, which we don't want. But if that does happen, as I mentioned earlier, you could just use the face to resync them again. Now that we're back at the custom night menu screen, you notice that there are a couple presets here. These include Treasure Island, Junk Island, The Boss, Focus, Patience, Looking for, Mortimer, Skull, Grind Time, Nightmare at Disney, and SM. These presets up here are basically to give you a feel of the mechanics of the game, since the challenges are kind of free. Trust me. I won't really go into depth into them, but trust me, it's mainly to build up for a foundation. More specifically, for the first max mode of the game, Nightmare at Disney. Welcome to Nightmare at Disney, or NAD for short. It's the first max mode you'll likely play, and it is really simple. It's just 1520, one that may look overwhelming at first, but as you continue to play it, it becomes relatively less difficult. Every character at first will just generally wander, but then after a couple seconds, boom! Everybody's in your office, PNM and CPNM are about to attack, you have no clue what to do. Well, with this, you will have a clue, I guess. At the beginning of the night, close cam 3 and check for hourglass. While warming the cameras, at around 7 seconds, Pete will spawn. Deal with him, and then eventually, Mortimer will spawn. Find his camera, but do not shut it off just yet. After around 15 seconds, Undying will spawn, which is your cue to start the office cycle. Hello there. Oh, bro, this mode is so
doing a Nightmare at Disney.
This mode is
okay,
so
4 attempts is crazy. I got this.
Remember, shake for mascot, stand still on the right for Undying, lights off, stand still for both Ace and Sparky, and then shut off Mortimer once you get back into cams. After this, look for both PNM and CPNM. PNM will enter first, and then CPNM. So find PNM first beforehand, and then deal with it. Afterwards, shut off Impurity again, and prepare for CPNM and the second office cycle. For this cycle, both Hourglass and the Face will sync up, and ideally, you'll eventually deal with all 7 threats at once. Deal with the Face by doing the office cycle with the lights off. At this time, you might already get rid of Hourglass, and if he doesn't leave after Cephalus leaves, immediately shut off a camera. This deals with both Hourglass and Sparky. By around this time, you should have already dealt with CPNM, and afterwards shut off Impurity and Mortimer again. And that's the first 2 office cycles. This always happens all the time for all your attempts, so use this to your advantage. Afterwards, the night basically just becomes what you learned on beforehand, and pretty soon, after a lot of practice, you'll beat Nightmare at Disney.
That's doing that. That was so fucking stupid of me.
For this game, after your completion of NAD, you'll have 2 choices. You could either go on to SM, which places at top 50 at the moment, or you can move on to SNAD, or Silent Nightmare at Disney, which places at top 150. For more of an easier flow, I'll choose to go to explain SM first, rather than Silent Nightmare at Disney. But before you even touch SM, there's a brand new buff you need to learn, the aggressive buff. Now, what is the aggressive buff, you may ask? Well, these are mechanics that buff kit the characters that stay the whole night from 12 to 6. Some buffs range from literally ultra free to the worst thing you'll ever see in your entire life. I'll go over the buffs based on easiest to hardest. Willy appears on 3 cameras at once. This buff should be no problem since there is no actual difference with his kill timer. For the free tier, we have Cephalus, Undying, MPNM, CTF, Oswald, and Sparky. For the office cycle characters, the buff should be no problem at all, since you'll just need to focus on being slightly faster with them. Ace and Undying only stall once you're standing still on their sides, and their kill timers are reduced to 6 seconds. For MPNM and Sparky, however, the former, he no longer stalls his kill timer while you're flicking in the office, and for Sparky, he only just uses 1 kill timer. For CTF, it still applies with the Golden Freddy idea, but simply just get used to the habit of flipping up your camera more often, since you'll kill in 0.6 seconds if you decide to turn the lights off or stand still as he's in your office. Oswald's kill timer drains faster while you're in the cameras, but it's usually still enough time for you to sync him up with the office cycle. Just don't forget he's there in your office. With the other characters, they have a chance to kill you, but are generally just a nuisance. This includes Disembodied and Pete. Disembodied requires you to shut off the cameras on both sides now, so it can be slightly more threatening with his appearances, i.e. with the office cycle or with the face. Lastly, with Pete, he may seem threatening at first, but he resets his kill timer back to 20 seconds if you watch him once. So even though you have to watch him 3 times, just treat him like he's like unnormal, but appears slightly more often. For the second tier, these buffs are actually threatening, and you could die indirectly or directly to other characters thanks to their buffs. These 3 buffs are Impurity, the Face, and Mortimer. Impurity now refills her timer rather than just instantly resetting, so much so that 1 second of her kill timer her camera being off equals 2 seconds added to her movement timer. As a result of this change, you must now keep your camera off for much longer, increasing more the difficulty of your camera management. The face now requires you to shut off cam 9 as you shut off the lights. Doesn't seem like much, but some people do forget to shut off cam 9. I've done this before. And if he spawns out of an office cycle, he could potentially get you killed. Just be sure to pay attention to his sound cues more often. Lastly, Mortimer is now permanently in your office, forcing you to reset his kill timer much more often. The best way to do this is to sync him up with the office cycle. The way to do this is to shut him off after everyone. That way, he resets his kill timer after you deal with the office cycle. So yes, SM doesn't seem too bad with these buffs. However, this is because you haven't met the big three, the menaces of SM. Yup, there is a big three, at least for me, for many new players, and these big three, and this quote-unquote big three, is the most problematic trio in SM. I'll start from the easiest to adjust to the hardest. First is CP&M. His buff allows him to move an extra camera before entering your office, with another additional sound cue. In addition, he also enters faster by 8 seconds. This makes the memory portion of him more of an annoyance, but when it comes to the adjustments, it's the easiest to adapt to, since after all, even in NAD, you still have to memorize him. The next character that is somewhat easy to adapt to is P&M. And yes, you have to memorize him as well. Since he's no longer visible in your office, you have to be sure to check cam 2 or cam 6 to see what camera you shut off. The hard part was not the fact that he could appear in either cam 2 or 6 and you have to memorize that. It's the fact that he likes to be different and leave after 2 seconds. For him, you gotta be a lot more patient. But when it comes to adjustments, the hardest was Hourglass, in my opinion. Because unlike in NAD, when you can just guess him, you can't really do that in SM, since he has 5 possible actions rather than 3. If he spawns in cam 3 or 4, you must shut off either one of those cameras for at least 1 second. If he goes in cam 5 or cam 8, you must stand still on the left for cam 5 and stand still on the right for cam 8. Lastly, cam 9 remains the same, shut off the lights. One of these 3 will guarantee give you the most deaths in SM, and will be one of your main problems for your SM journey, and you should really prepare and adapt to their changes. The changes to these characters prove why SM is way higher than NAD and certainly requires a build-up. What I did to build up was to have the top 6 remain as normal, but everybody else as aggressive. I kept adding more and more of the top 6 as aggressive until the P&M duo. Then I eventually went to SM. SM is a huge jump from NAD, from 200 all the way to top 60, but it's a jump that's possible, one I didn't do, but many others have. So with that being said, I'll teach you how to deal with the first 2 cycles and give a little more insight into each character. At the beginning of the night, once again, shut off cam 3 and look for Hourglass, but this time actually remember where he was. It's best to check cams 3, 4, and 8. And this is because if he wasn't in one of those 3 cams, you'll know which action to do, and if he wasn't, you have to turn off the lights and stand still to the left. Pete will spawn as this happens. Make sure to deal with him as usual. You actually have enough time to look at him all 3 times, and while you're doing this, look for Mortimer, but do not shut him off. The reason why is because we will sync Mortimer with the office cycle, so be prepared to stay on his camera. Then when Undying spawns, start the cycle. Afterwards, shut off Mortimer, and then shut off Impurity again. With the first cycle dealt with, it's now time to look for both P&M and CP&M. They'll sync up for the first attack, but will eventually desync over time, since you can't always deal with both of them at once. For this attack, I usually do CP&M first, since he leaves faster, and after him, I deal with P&M. If you can't tell when he left your office, P&M will appear for a frame on cam 3 on the far left if you can't see him on the far right. Once you deal with both Mickeys, be prepared to deal with the second office cycle. Like in Nightmare at Disney, the second office cycle will have both Hourglass and the face. So here's what we're gonna do. Deal with MP&M and Undying, face will spawn, and Hourglass will hit the desk afterwards. Depending on where Hourglass was, you either deal with him before or after finishing the cycle. Go back into cams, close cam 9, and finish the cycle. Getting rid of face, Ace, and after dealing with Hourglass, Sparky. Shut off Mortimer again, and then shut off Impurity again.
If you die, I die.
Oh, okay.
Literally, I die.
Okay, so I'll throw on camera again. These are the first 2 alpha cycles and should give you an easier time with the beginning. For the rest of the night, searching cameras more often is essential, and being able to deal with the cycle threats more can allow you to deal with threats in the cameras much more often. Remember, as you're dealing with PNM, check Cam 3 to see if he's in there if you're unsure of him leaving or not. Hourglass checking is just as important now, as we don't want to lose him at all anymore. It's best to check 3, 4, and 8 once more in order to counter him. Don't worry about 5 and 9, since, well, as I mentioned before, just stand still on the left with the lights off. With Mortimer, be consistent with shutting him off after every single office cycle, and then afterwards, keep impurity off much more often. With dealing with Pete, you can either watch him as you have Mortimer shut off, or as you have PNM shut off. CPNM's memory game still becomes an important factor in your runs, and you have to pay attention to a second audio cue in order to see which camera to actually shut off. Lastly, be wary of Face's audio cues, and yes, his buff is pretty small, it could also be pretty forgettable. Make sure to shut off Cam 9 once you see him in your office. Eventually, however, with enough effort put into it, you will beat SM.
This dude really is choking. No.
I literally let him drink him too for no reason. What am I doing? Like, that was so dumb. Oh, whatever.
Hey, did you actually do it?
Before I explain silent mode and its mechanics, you should probably give sleep paralysis a try. Sleep paralysis is the exact same as SM, except impurity must be in Cam 3 from the start to finish. Some players even get this achievement within their first completion of SM, but don't worry, I didn't. Point is, sleep paralysis requires you to get a lot more used to impurity's aggressive buff and adds slightly more camera management, but since it plays very similarly to SM, SP should go down no problem. Now that we're done with the normal variants of these 2 max modes, we can get into the more fun part of the game, silent mode. Now what is silent mode? Silent mode has 2 parts to it. 1, it turns on the power mechanic. How the mechanic works is that on a random camera, a green dot will be on it. You must locate that camera and shut it off. If you leave it on, your power will begin to drain. The longer you leave it on, the more power you'll begin to lose more and more frequently. However, if you shut that camera off, your power will instantly reset back to 0 loss and will no longer drain. It will drain more and more every 6 seconds of that camera being on. Now 2. It adds buffs to characters. You might be saying, oh, what the hell? More buffs? But relax. Half of them are nothing. I'm gonna start with how the buffs work. Every hour, 3 random characters are chosen to be buffed, and depending on your settings, you will either get hallucinations, voice lines, or both. These buffs last for 30 seconds, and the characters will no longer be buffed once their attack cycle ends. I'll get into this more. I will now display both their hallucinations and voice lines.
Wanna see my head come off?
Now, I'll go into each of their buffs. PNM now requires you to stand still as his camera is off. In return for this, he leaves much faster, and I mean much faster, since his leave timer goes from 2 seconds to 0.5 seconds. Disembodied now requires you to have his camera off for 0.5 seconds. Doesn't even seem that much of a difference, but it could be slightly game changing. Impurity will now shut off a random camera if you have your camera closed for 2 seconds. However, this buff won't take place if a character needs their camera off. An example could be PNM or CPNM. Cephalus and Undying now give you much less space to work with when it comes to standing still on their side, now being shortened all the way to 10 pixels on each of their sides. Oswald can now appear while you're in the cameras. However, he takes a while to spawn, around 10 full seconds. The face buff is one of the most crucial to remember. The lights must be off before he enters the office. Failing to do so will result in death after 5 seconds. Hourglass will now have an additional movement before deciding to enter your office. MP&M will no longer leave your office for the duration of the silent effect. However, flicking your cursor even slightly reset the skill timer all the way up back to 7 seconds. Mortimer now requires you to wait longer for his timer to fully reset, since he now only refills rather than instantly resets. CP&M can now appear in any camera, and that includes 10 and 7. Yes, quite literally every camera. CTF's buff is that the cams need to be up for 0.3 seconds in order for him to actually go away. And while yes, this buff is technically free, Hourglass didn't move yet. That's weird. Jesus.
That is fucking.
Thank God he stings.
What the
Thank God he
fuck
stings.
happened? Oh wait, no, you did. No, wait.
Pete will now move cameras every 1.5 seconds. This will not happen if you are actively looking at his camera. Willie now appears on all cameras at once. And lastly, Sparky will now bark audibly on either the left or the right. And you must shut off a camera on that side and then on the other side to fully deal with him. And that's all the silent buffs. As you can see, some characters are like a joke to like top tier pain in the ass. Actually, there is one more thing about silent I didn't mention. Remember how I said that 3 characters get buffed every hour? This isn't the case for 5 AM. 5 AM, every character gets buffed one by one until the 6:30 mark, where all characters are buffed at once. This really ramps up the difficulty of 5 AM specifically and shows how much more important it is to be aware of who's getting buffed at 5 AM. However, if you're still confused as to how some buffs work, don't worry. You can test the buffs within the menu screen on the left of the Start Night button. You can test a button that only appears when silent mode is being played. On this night, characters selected are permanently buffed, and this is intentionally designed for players to learn the silent mechanics for each character. Silent Nightmare at Disney, or SNAT for short, is basically NAD with power. I'm lying, but it is kind of easy because once you beat SM, you'll beat SNAT fairly quickly. Just remember that the NAD gameplay from when you first played, and make sure to remember the buffs that could stress you out. In addition, 5 AM will likely kill you a lot, so just be sure to go in and be prepared in the order for which the characters get buffed. I want to take a moment to just pause. Probably put so much effort into this game. After all, everybody you played that has gotten to this point has done so. You're probably wondering now though, are we finally going to get to the main focus of the guide? And yes, we are indeed. It is time for SSM. SSM. Oh, SSM. This is currently 15th on the main list at the time of this recording. And for very good reason. Well, sure, it is one of the more popular top modes on the list. Its speed, precision, and most importantly, awareness requirements shows how much more important these factors are for this mode. SSM combines both the aggressive buffs and silent mechanics all into this one mode. In order to explain how to combat this mode, I'll need to explain how some characters change based on having both their aggressive and silent. Like with SM, I'll go over the characters based on their combined buffs and how much they can affect a run. Willie isn't even that much of a threat to begin with. While maybe his silent mechanic can cause you to make a mistake with his progression, it is simply just progression, meaning he can't kill you unless you decide to keep looking at him for some reason. Overall, he is a 1 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. He is the last character you should be dying to out of all of them. CTF is very similar to Willie in terms of difficulty, except you have a little less room to deal with him, since if you fail to deal with them after standing still or having the lights off, it's just death for you. However, if you don't do what I showed you earlier, you should be okay. I would overall rate him a 1 to 2. In niche scenarios, he can sometimes get you killed, but his buffs heavily rely on you blundering, because he's just the same unless you make a mistake. Oswald isn't that problematic in terms of his mechanics, since he takes around 10 seconds to actually spawn in your office. Thanks to that, you still do get a fair amount of time to deal with him. Forgetting about him, however, can be problematic. I rate him a 2 out of 10 in terms of difficulty, so, although sometimes you could just complete for completely forget he exists. By just dealing with the office cycle alone, he's just like not even a character anymore. Sparky is also relatively easy. However, I've noticed a lot of people forgetting to shut off the other side for him as well, which does get some people killed. However, he generally is just a small annoyance. Just be sure to shut off the camera for both sides to fully get rid of him. Again, a 2 out of 10. He's like nothing. But since, like, as I mentioned before, people can forget him, it can cause problems. Disembodied. Oh, disembodied. While disembodied himself can't kill you outright, he is still extremely annoying. In worst case scenario, can get you killed by other characters. So I give him a 3 out of 10. He is annoying. Now that he doesn't leave instantly and he appears on both sides, he disrupts the run since he screws over the office cycle and wastes a bit of impurity time when he's buffed. Acephalus is a free aggressive buff, but a fairly difficult silent buff. If you slightly forget to flick all the way to the left, you're as good as dead. I give him a 3 out of 10, even though I arguably think it should be lower, since he honestly isn't even that bad. The only time it could get you is if you need to rush. And even then, half the time, it doesn't even kill you. Undying is the exact same, except he can be a little weird. Even if you stand still all the way, sometimes he just like won't leave, which got me killed a lot. But he's just the exact same as Acephalus overall. I give him a 3.5 because although it is practically Ace's buff, he still has an inconsistent range of when it comes to standing still on his side. So that makes it just barely above Acephalus. While one of the freest buffs, it's definitely one of the most important to notice. Since missing it will kill you, and if you think he's buffed when he isn't, you still die. 3.5 out of 10. This buff combination would be a 10 if it was ranked in terms of importance, but the difficulty is not that bad. Just make sure to keep resetting him every time you go back into the office. Now Pete is a little interesting. He is extremely chokeable at 5 AM runs and extremely forgettable. Once you notice him, however, he becomes free, just like characters like Oswald. So again, he's not really a problem. I give him a 4 out of 10. This is mainly because of how chokeable he really is. At 5 AM specifically, because believe me, I know. Fuck! Now the buffs begin to actually become existing, sorta. P&M's aggressive buff can still throw you off since his invisibility can cause potential memory problems. However, silent buff nerfs him to the point where he isn't even a threat with memory, where you could just guess him and get away with it. I give it a 5 out of 10 because his silent buff, as I said before, like, honestly nerfs him, but it is something you'll need to get used to, just like MP&M. But once you get used to it, he becomes one of the easiest characters. Mortimer. Adding on to this permanent office buff, which hopefully you got used to by now, he now even requires you to wait longer than he usually would take, forcing you to sacrifice some impurity time. I give this a 6 out of 10. While he is a little interesting with his aggressive buff and how he stays permanently, it is something that you have to get used to, similarly with P&M, because once you get used to it, he becomes a little easier to manage and a lot less tricky to deal with. Hourglass's aggressive buff definitely carries him this hard, since his silent buff is much easier compared to the rest of the cast. I still wouldn't underestimate him if you forget, and if you don't have the time to guess him, you might as well just be dead. I give it a 6 out of 10, arguably 7 out of 10. His aggressive buff is still definitely difficult, but his silent makes it so that you have to be absolutely certain as to where he is. Once you get used to that habit, his buff becomes a little more manageable as time goes on. Impurity is nowhere near as bad as she is in ESM, but in SSM she is an extreme threat when she's silent buff. You'll need to prioritize her on the cameras immediately after doing the office cycle, unless a P&M is close to killing you. It's kind of like MP&M, where both buffs need to be combined for them to be a genuine threat. I give this difficulty meter of an 8 out of 10. This is pretty bad. When she's buff, your management of her has to be top tier, since she only gives you 4 seconds added to her timer until another random camera is shut off. Make sure to always have her camera closed at all times whenever you don't need them for someone else. Ace's buff. Oh my god. His aggressive buff isn't that bad, but when it comes to having his silent buff too, he is honestly one of the worst characters to deal with. Having to have the aggressive buff combined with you shutting both cam 9 and the lights off before he enters your office, he becomes much more of a threat. I give this an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. Definitely one of, if not the hardest silent buff out of all of them, and on top of that, you're also going to lose impurity time to him. Definitely a buff that you'll need to pay attention to. And out of everyone in this cast, CP&M, man. CP&M is so annoying. Not only does he move an additional camera, he can spawn in all 10 cameras. Yup, he definitely will get you so much, since you have to now either give him complete attention, similar to Impurity. The best time to find him is when you're dealing with either PNM or refilling Impurity. 9 out of 10. Probably a 10 out of 10. Top tier difficulty, man. While his aggressive buff is a bit funny and not that bad, his silent buff makes him, at least for me, extremely difficult to manage. Since he moves twice, you have to be aware for when he does his second movement specifically. Able to memorize and be aware of which camera he was in last, and if you didn't, you might as well pray as to where he last was. With only luck can save you there. SSM is definitely not an easy mode to conquer. It requires you to know all of the fundamentals of what the game has to offer, so it doesn't just require your speed, your precision, awareness, and your game knowledge. It requires all of that, and then some. When it comes to SSM, there are so many things to worry about, and messing up one small part can either cost mistakes like impurity movement, power loss, or to be even more honest, death.
Oh no!
SSM leaves little to no room for error, and all it takes for you to make one small mistake. Now you're wondering, how are we supposed to practice this mode? Have no fear, for Eternal is here. Yeah, I'm sorry. Eternal mode is a mode that is found in the unlocked version of FNATI. I am aware now that you can play Eternal in the current patch of the game. It's just better to play an unlocked for learning and for no cracked screen. Please fix that, Caesar. Eternal mode is where silent buffs are always active since the beginning of the night and are permanent for the rest of the night. Using this mode for practice is extremely important for 5 AM specifically, since 5 AM is where all the characters will get buffed one by one. So learning the Eternal cycle can help practice 5 AM, along with understanding how all silent buffs work in correlation to their aggressive buffs. I recommend hitting around late 1 AM to around 2 AM on ESM to better prepare for 5 AM. But if I'm going to be genuinely honest, as much as it sounds cliche, getting used to the environment and playing more and more is the best tip I can give. SSM relies heavily on how much you know, and by continuing to play, the more you'll get used to certain buff combos and how to handle specific scenarios. For instance, let's say the game gives you Undying, CPNM, and the Faces buffs. Since every character will attack at least once with their silent buff, you know you would have to pay special attention to the side characters. With their silent buffs and this combo, you would need to put your cursor nearly off screen to the right for Undying whenever you have to do the Alpha cycle. While this buff is manageable, the two most difficult silent buffs, Face and CPNM, are also here. For Face, you have to pay heavy attention to his sound cues, more specifically his warning sound cue. This one right here. From there, you would have 5 seconds until you're forced to do Cam 9 and lights off. And lastly, with CPNM, you must be sure to fixate on and remember his camera for when you have to shut him off. Remember, he can be anywhere in cams, from cam 1 all the way to cam 10. And by simply continuing to play over and over, you'll be able to understand all of these variations and buff combos. 5 AM, however, is completely different. As I said before, Eternal mode and Unlocked is very helpful. It's best to go here once you consistently hit 5 AM more often, to get a feel for the environment once you hit it. Once you hit around 1 or 2 AM, as I said before, you'll be mostly prepared. Just be sure to know who's getting buffed one by one, since, as I said, they get slowly buffed. But with enough playtime, dedication, practice, and tenacity, you can beat a top 20 MML and a top 70 AML, and beat Silent SM.
Good job, mediocre. Good job.
Let's go.
Good job.
Oh my god. You fucking deserve this.
I told you, do not trip out. Don't trip out. Don't trip out. You would have died to something. Don't trip out, mediocre.
This guy took way too long to release. But I'm glad to say at least it is finally out. I want to thank all of you for your patience and the fact that, well, the AML and MML have given me nice communities here. Even with, like, a lot of things happening. Appreciate everything. Thank you all so much. But wait. What about Eternal? One day. I'll get there one day.